All right, good evening, everyone. We have a quorum, so we are going to be able to start the meeting. So good evening, Happy New Year. My name is LUHZ. I'm the chair of the Land Use, Housing and Zoning Committee of Community Board 5. We are here to review one application tonight. A few words about how the meeting is going to proceed. You're probably familiar with our procedures, but I need to spell them out. The applicant will be given an opportunity to give us a presentation. This presentation will be full and uninterrupted. Once this presentation concludes, members of the committee will have the opportunity to ask questions to the applicant. Then I will open up the floor to members of the public. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments to the application. Then when this question comment period concludes, the applicant will have an opportunity to address those. And then we will move to business session. During business session, only members of the committee are allowed to discuss the matter. We will make comments and then we will come to an understanding of where the committee's position is. A motion will be made and it will be taken to a vote. The vote from the committee will then be presented to the full board of Community Board 5, which meets on Thursday next week. And the full board of CB5 will take a vote on the resolution passed by the committee. The vote of the full board becomes the official position of Community Board 5. So we are here tonight for an application for a proposed building at 570 Fifth Avenue. Before the applicant tells us everything we have to know about this project, a few things that you guys should know. This is pursuant to zoning for accessibility, which is this new zoning tool, the zoning text that was recently adopted by the City of New York, that provides the opportunity for an applicant to get a bonus density in exchange for transit upgrades. It is my understanding that this is the second application of this type the city is reviewing. The first one, as you remember, came to us 2 months ago. It was also in CB5, and it concerned a building on 57th Street and 6th Avenue. So this one is located on 5th Avenue and 47th Street, between 47 and 48. What we are dealing with tonight is the review of the scoping of this particular proposal. So as you know, as you're familiar with scoping, we're not reviewing the whole proposal itself. We are looking at the scope of what is going to be evaluated as part of the environmental impact statement that is necessary for this project to go through. So this is the very first layer of review that we get to do and familiarize ourselves with this proposal, but we're not really going to comment on whether we like the building, we don't like the building. Actually, we don't know what the building is going to look like. What we're going to be presented tonight is massing and not design. And there will be another opportunity to really look at the merits of the building. So what we're looking at tonight, once again, is the scope of this proposal. So I will turn it to the applicants now. I think we have a full room with lots of team members. We welcome you. And I don't know if I should turn it to you, David, or if anybody else is giving some intro comments, but the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Wesley O'Brien from my office, and he will be the MC on our end for tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you. Take it away.
Sure, and I'm sharing my screen now to get started. You should be able to see that now. And good evening, Wesley O'Brien of Fried Frank. I'm the Land Use Counsel to Exdel Development. Tonight I'm joined by Gary Barnett of Exdel, Helene Cinque and Marcus Book of the MTA, David Karnofsky of Fried Frank, Amy Crater and Steve Rosen of AKRF, Trent Tesh of KPF, and Daniel Cohen of Stantec. And we're here to discuss a proposed project at 575th Avenue and the draft scope of work that was provided to you for the project's EIS. Tonight, we will provide a brief overview of the proposal and provide relevant site information and a project description. We're going to discuss the transit improvements and the anticipated zoning actions before finally discussing the environmental analyses described in the draft scope of work for the EIS. So to begin, XDEL will provide a brief overview of the proposed development. Gary, if you could, the floor is yours. Gary, I believe you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm just going to give a little brief introductory note, and then we'll go through the project. Of course, I think the last time I was in front of CV5 was when we built that beautiful building on the block, the International Jump Tower. So thank you all for meeting with us today. Appreciate the opportunity to present to the committee my latest project, 570 Fifth Avenue. The site is located between 46th and 47th Street in the heart of Community Board 5. And for this exceptional location, prime Midtown area, I'm proposing to build a state-of-the-art new office tower, as well as a very substantial set of transit improvements, which has been fully embraced by the MTA and city planning. I started assembling this land over a decade ago when I was building the International Jump Tower building. So we wound up buying some buildings then to get the air rights, and after a while we said, hey, let's get even more ambitious and see if we could build a truly trophy and really a beautiful state-of-the-art office building in Midtown. My proposal features a 47-story office tower with a high-quality design focused on workplace productivity, wellness, and sustainability. The pandemic is changing the way companies are thinking about their real estate needs, and the city will need a new generation of projects that respond to those needs and provide the highest quality of space. This is imperative to maintain New York City's competitiveness as a global center of business. Due to market uncertainty, I'm also proposing an alternative plan for a mixed-use tower, including residential, hotel, and retail space. This is not my preferred plan, but it is a necessary option to have in order to mitigate the overall risk of the project under current market conditions. The second part of the project includes a much-needed suite of improvements to the nearby Fifth Avenue and 53rd Street station, the E and the M lines. Over the last year, we have collaborated with the MTA and the Department of City Planning to develop this transformative project, which will make the station ADA accessible, as well as expand capacity and circulation, delivering substantive benefits to the public. And I think that that's something I can't emphasize enough. And everybody I talk to says, yes, that station is jammed and needs help. Together, the new building and the major transit improvements create a unique opportunity to partner with the city to create a top quality project that will strengthen both the business community and the city's infrastructure for many decades to come. I think this is an appropriate place, obviously Midtown, to have a large office building, and I hope you will support it. My team will now take you through the details of the project, and of course, we'll be answering questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Right, so next, I will provide a brief overview of the site. The development site is a 43,000 square foot site located as shown here in red on Fifth Avenue between West 46th and West 47th Streets within the special Midtown district. The eastern portion of the development site is located within a C5-3 district within the Fifth Avenue subdistrict, and the western portion of the development site is located within a C6-4.5 district. And then again here, as you see shown in red, the development site is shown along Fifth Avenue. The site is comprised of 11 vacant tax lots, as well as 2 additional tax lots along 47th Street with existing buildings that are undergoing demolition. The site is part of a larger zoning lot, which is shown here outlined in blue and extending west towards 6th Avenue. So a few views of the existing site conditions. First, at the left is a view of the site looking north from West 46th Street. And then on the right is a view of the site looking northwest from the corner of 5th Avenue and 46th Street. On the left here is a view of from the corner of 5th Avenue and 47th Street looking back towards the site. The building shown in the foreground, however, is not part of the development site and will not be redeveloped as part of the project. The development site is both to the left of that building and shown with the scaffolding and netting to the right of that building. The image on your right now is looking back towards the site from 47th Street, and you can see the two buildings undergoing demolition. They're located behind the netting. So at this time, KPF will describe the project the proposed project in more detail. So Trent?
Good evening. My name is Trent Tesh. I'm a design principal at Cohen Pedersen Fox, and I'll be taking you through the design of the building. 575th Avenue is a 47-story, 1.5 million square foot office tower located at the heart of Fifth Avenue. We've designed the building to bridge the scale of the Grand Central Core as it meets Fifth Avenue. As you can see in this rendering, its base is designed to relate to the height of the adjacent structures and the neighboring buildings along Fifth Avenue. We feel like the scale really it fits comfortably between the Grand Central Corridor and the Rockefeller Center building. Just want to make a quick note that the height of 570 and Rock Center are roughly the same height, but about half as much floor area as 30 Rock. Next. We take inspiration from 30 Rock, the landmark tower closest to the site. In our design, we create a stepping form with external rooms that give the tower character and human scale. You can see in the axonometric on the right-hand side. Next. Here you can see how these human scale moments connect to the urban fabric of Midtown and give life to the form of the building. So each one of these rooms is connecting space on the inside of the building to the outside of the building, which we find incredibly important, but they also link directly to a landmark position in the site. Next. These terraces and rooms are inspired by the well-known Channel Gardens of Rock Center. Next. These strategically placed external rooms play an important role for the wellness of the occupants and the sustainability of the project. So not only do they give character and life to the vertical stack of the building, but they also impart a sustainable measure and a wellness component to the use group of the building. Next. Here you can see a view of one of the terraces looking west at the top of the podium along Fifth Avenue. Seen from the street, these terraces give the building character and human scale. Next. The facade consists of a 2-foot wide vertical pier that draws inspiration from both 30 Rock and the neighboring 565 Fifth Avenue. Its vertical expression gives the building an elegant character while also providing valuable insulation for sustainable purposes. Next. The proposed development is an 858-foot, 47-story office building with roughly 1.5 million square feet of floor area. The ground floor plan shows a centralized lobby on Fifth Avenue, flanked by retail on each side. There's a porte cochere located on the western edge of the plan to alleviate traffic around the site. Next. The alternate proposed development is a 1,060-foot, 78-story mixed-use residential and hotel tower with approximately 1.4 million square feet of space. The ground floor plan shows entry points on the 46th Street side and the 47th Street side and retail wrapping around Fifth Avenue. There's also a porte cochere located on the western edge of the site. Wesley, back to you.
Sure. And at this point, we'll turn to the transit improvements that are being proposed. Helene Cinque of the MTA will introduce the proposed transit improvements, and Daniel Cohen of Stantec will describe them in more detail.
Hi, good evening. I'm Helene Cinque from the MTA. The MTA is delighted to present this exciting project for a suite of major transportation improvements at the 5th Avenue and 53rd Street station, which is the E and the M lines. Over the last year, we've collaborated with Extel and New York City DCP to develop a scope of improvements that will substantially improve conditions at this important station, including ADA accessibility and much needed additional circulation capacity. It's important to highlight that the project will upgrade the transit improvements contemplated for the station in the Greater East Midtown Plan, providing greater benefits for the public than originally anticipated. Elements of this major project include new center access core, new and reconfigured sidewalk stairs, new mezzanine with new fare control area, new escalators to platforms, new stairs to platforms, direct off-street sidewalk to platform ADA elevator, and new connecting passageways from elevator to platform. This is a complex station with deep platforms that require a comprehensive and carefully integrated set of improvements. Rather than executing these improvements in a number of phases over many years, we have the unique opportunity here to have a single party deliver all the work as one single project. Both the MTA and city planning view this as a major advantage of this plan. The MTA does not have this project in its current capital budget, so it's highly unlikely this project could be built in the next decade without partnership with the private sector. For all these reasons, we're excited to partner with the city and Extel to deliver these important improvements and significantly upgrade one of the key stations in Midtown Manhattan. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to pass it on to Daniel Cohen from Stantec to describe things in more detail.
Thanks, Helene. My name is Daniel Cohen. I'm with Stantec Consulting. We're the transit consultant on this project. Helene touched on them, but this station does have a unique combination of needs and challenges that I'll quickly walk you through. So as of fall of 2019, which is obviously pre-pandemic levels, the station was the 37th busiest in the system with 58,000 daily entries and exits. It also happens to be a deep station in bedrock, approximately 8 stories below 53rd Street, and the northbound and southbound platforms are stacked on top of each other. The station currently can only be accessed by escalators in one of 2 existing circulation cores, one to the far west end, west of 5th Avenue, and the other to the far east end, east of Madison Avenue, as shown here on the screen. So in other words, a passenger exiting the station would have to walk towards either far end of the platform. If they're on the lower platform, they would walk up a set of stairs. And then as they get to the upper platform, they would access the escalators to those 2 existing mezzanine areas I just described. As you can see from the photos to the right of the screen, this leads to some major congestion problems, especially during the AM peak hours. Currently, it can take a passenger up to 5 times longer to clear the platform than current guidelines recommend. And next slide. Because of the depth and configuration of the station, there is no other way to solve this problem or add accessibility from either of the 2 existing cores. And so we need to design and construct a brand new center circulation core to solve these problems, shown here in bright yellow in the center of the screen. This will be a massive engineering and construction undertaking. And just to provide comparison in terms of the excavation and the new structures needed here, we're talking about the scale of the 2nd Avenue subway entrances. So I've just shown a couple of examples here on the right side of the screen. We'll need a new mezzanine and access core like the one with fare control, like the one shown here at 86th Street. And to the lower right-hand corner, a new 8-story long escalator shaft, such as the one you'll find at 72nd Street. Next slide. This just summarizes the existing and proposed conditions, just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with here. On the left is the existing, again, a tunnel built in the 20s, mined in bedrock, 8 stories underground. And on the right is what we would need to do here to provide direct street to platform ADA access. So this would be an elevator reaching the upper and lower platforms connected via a passageway to the tunnel on the right. Next slide. And then just to back out a bit to provide an overall view of the scale here. Again, you see the same elevator shaft and passageways in the background of this image. And in the foreground, you can see the escalator and stair access core providing access from a new mezzanine or a mezzanine extension, I should say, to the upper platform and to the lower platform. So everything, next slide, please, Wesley. Everything that you see here highlighted in yellow would be new. Again, there's no feasible way to provide ADA accessibility or the much needed additional escalator capacity at the station without constructing all of these new elements in a new center circulation core. We're talking about an incredibly complex design and construction project here with an enormous quantity of bedrock excavation needed over an area almost the length of a football field and again, the depth of an 8-story building. Next slide, please. I'll just walk you through quickly the different levels of the station now that you've seen the overall view. This is the existing mezzanine level. Right now, as you might be familiar with the station, but a passenger could access the station through one of 2 existing stairs on the east side of 5th Avenue, one on the north sidewalk and one on the south sidewalk, but would then have to walk to the existing paid area on the west side of 5th via an underpass under 5th Avenue. And right now this adds approximately 300 extra feet of travel distance for a customer just to reach the top of the escalator. And so what we're planning to do, if you jump to the next slide, Wesley, we're planning to extend this mezzanine east to create the new center core I've described in previous slides and reconfigure the existing stairs on the north and south sidewalks and provide 2 new staircases on the north sidewalk, providing additional capacity for this new center core. Again, new fare control, and you can see here in this image, the new escalators and stairs down. Also shown here is connections to the back of house spaces for the direct street to platform elevator I described previously. Next slide, please. This is the existing upper platform level. We're looking at roughly half of the length of this platform in this view, just to give you a sense of how far a passenger would need to walk to exit the station if they were getting off the train towards the center. And you can see also towards the center of this image, the existing ADA boarding area. Obviously the station is not accessible, but there is an area where passengers using a wheelchair would board. Next slide, please. And so as described earlier, the escalator shaft would come down through a new access core and provide access to that platform or further on to the lower platform via a stair. Or you can see here this ADA elevator with the connecting passageway towards the left of this screen. Again, this would provide direct elevator access from street to platform. So no need for a wheelchair user to transfer elevators at the mezzanine like other stations in the system. And the other great feature about our solution here is the passageway would put a passenger in a wheelchair within 25 feet of that boarding area. So that the travel distance is significantly reduced as compared to many other stations in the system. Next slide. This is the lower platform. It's a very similar condition. And in the proposed, on the next slide, a similar passageway for the direct connection from the elevator. So again, this would be a 3-stop street, upper platform and lower platform elevator. And then you have the stair access down the lower platform towards the right-hand side. On the next slide, you have a summary showing the cross-section of all these improvements and how they all tie together, just to show the length and the depth of what we're planning. Helene summarized this at the beginning, but I'll run through it quickly now. Wesley, if you just follow me along, the new street entrances east of 53rd, on East 53rd Street, east of 5th Avenue, a new mezzanine area under 53rd Street with fare control to accommodate the street entrance and the new access core, the new access core between platform and street level, new ADA elevator from street to upper passageway and to lower passageway, those 2 new passageways with fare control to connect the new ADA elevator with the platforms, a new escalator, 2 new escalators, from mezzanine to upper platform, a new stair from mezzanine to upper platform, and a stair from upper to lower platforms. And then 2 relocated and reoriented stairs to connect the new mezzanine with the existing mezzanine, and also oriented towards 5th Avenue. And with that, I'll summarize at the end again, giving you the overall image, and I'll pass it back over to Wesley. Thank you.
So thank you, Daniel. So now turning to the anticipated zoning actions. Under either scenario that was described earlier, the building would contain approximately 616,000 zoning square feet of floor area, and that is 616,000 square feet of base floor area, I should say, and 560,000 square feet of bonus floor area. Shown on the left here is the building envelope within which each of the two development programs that Trent described earlier would fit. It would provide for street walls of up to 197 feet along 46th Street and 5th Avenue, and 225 feet along 47th Street, and a maximum building height of 1,100 feet. This is the maximum building envelope that will be studied in the EIS to ensure a conservative analysis of shadows and other potential impacts. Now, in order to facilitate the proposal, we'll be requesting 4 actions. These include zoning text amendments to modify zoning for accessibility to facilitate the completion of these major station improvements, a special permit pursuant to zoning for accessibility to provide a floor area bonus for the proposed subway station improvements, a special permit to modify various bulk and use regulations in order to accommodate the bonus floor area on this site within the proposed project, and finally, a special permit to allow for hotel uses. And now AKRF will walk you through the environmental analyses outlined in the draft scope of work.
Hi, I'm Amy Crater from the environmental consulting firm AKRF. AKRF will be preparing the environmental impact statement for this project, which is detailed in the draft scope of work. The Department of City Planning will serve as the lead agency for the environmental review. As shown in bold on this slide, all seeker analysis areas will be studied in detail in the EIS, with the exception of 3 technical areas that have screened out. These are community facilities and services, natural resources, and energy. The analysis for each technical area, shown in bold, will follow the methodologies of the seeker technical manual. Study areas, impact thresholds, and potential impacts will be identified for each technical analysis in accordance with the seeker technical manual. The analyses will consider the proposed project for both the preferred office development scenario and the alternative residential hotel development scenario. The proposed project is the with action scenario for the purposes of seeker. The proposed project will be compared to an as of right or no action office development that would be built on the development site absent the proposed actions. A key technical area that will be analyzed in EIS is shadows. The shadows analysis will consider whether the proposed project would generate new shadows that could affect any sunlight-sensitive resources in the shadow study area. The seeker technical manual defines sunlight-sensitive resources as publicly accessible parks and plazas, sunlight-dependent features of historic resources such as stained glass windows, green streets, and natural resources. The shadows analysis will compare shadows generated by the proposed project to shadows generated by the as-of-right building. The analysis conservatively analyzes the maximum building height, including bulkheads, rooftop bulkheads. The analysis will also consider existing shadows cast by intervening buildings between the development site and identified sunlight-sensitive resources. The shadows analysis will analyze the extent and duration of project-generated new shadows to determine whether impacts to sunlight-sensitive resources could occur with the proposed project. Another example of a key technical area that will be analyzed in the EIS is transportation. The transportation analysis will study traffic, transit, pedestrians, vehicle and pedestrian safety, and parking. Transportation analysis will assess potential impacts associated with the trip increments that could occur as a result of the proposed project. Travel demand projections will be prepared for the as-of-right office scenario, and for the proposed project, which, as I said before, is for both with action scenarios, meaning both the office development scenario and the residential hotel development scenario. The traffic analysis will analyze approximately 12 traffic intersections, which are generally located on 5th and 6th Avenues and 47th Street. Because the development site is served by several New York City Transit subway stations, which include Grand Central and Rockefeller Center, it's anticipated that specific subway station elements at these stations would warrant detailed analysis. Project-generated pedestrian trips are expected to concentrate near the development site and will be distributed throughout the study area. It's anticipated that approximately 51 pedestrian elements, which include sidewalks, corners, and crosswalks, would warrant detailed analyses. For the off-street parking, supply, and utilization analysis, the study area will include the area within a quarter mile of the study area of the development site. The analysis will include an inventory of existing parking levels within this quarter mile study area. The shadows and transportation analyses are examples of the analyses, the level of detail that will be prepared as part of the EIS. Overall, if the EIS analyses identify any significant adverse impacts to any of its seeker technical areas, mitigation measures will be developed in consultation with DCP as lead agency to reduce or eliminate these impacts. You can find more details about each analysis area and the methodologies for analysis in the draft scope of work. Next slide, please. Please note that the public scoping notice will be issued on January 10th with the scoping meeting scheduled for February 10th and the deadline for written comments as scheduled for February 22nd. I'll turn it back over to Wesley now, and we're happy to take any questions.
Yes, that concludes our presentation. So Chair Lagosico, I'll turn the floor back to you. And as Amy said, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So once again, for members of the committee, what we're really going to comment on, during this this seating is the scope of work. We will have an opportunity, and I just want to confirm that with you, Wesley, and David and Gary, there will be a presentation of the EIS itself, and we'll have an opportunity to comment on that. Is that correct? I see your head nodding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Wonderful. So let's dive right in, and we will take questions from members of the committee. Let's see. Dave Achilles. Dave, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. Without the bonus footage, how tall is the building?
Well, the building could be very tall as of right if we were to do residential. So there is a potential for building a tall building, but we really haven't analyzed it as to how tall it could be.
If I could add on that, for purposes of the EIS, we've laid out a no action scenario, that which would be under an office scenario, which we anticipate being the most likely to be constructed, and that would be approximately 417 feet tall. But I believe Gary was speaking to,
I was confused because you were comparing it with the 30 Rock, and there was only 47 floors in the building. Is that right in the proposal? And then with the bonus footage, you get, so what is it, 74 floors? There seems to be a big disparity in the amount of floor space that there will be.
Yes, it is. Well, the no action, the as of right building would be approximately 27 stories.
Okay.
Just to clarify, Wesley, 27 stories for a commercial building.
Correct.
That's what we would anticipate for an office building on an as of right basis.
Right.
And then the proposal would go up to 1,000 feet.
Okay.
That's for an office building. There's another scenario, obviously, that we put in that has a hotel and residential, and that could be taller, whether it's as of right or under the special permit. But right now, what we're proposing is a 47-story office building that reaches about 800 feet, Wesley?
Yes.
858.
Yeah.
But the residential option or the mixed use would be 78-story, 1,060 feet tall. That's correct. with action. I think David's question, Dave Achilles' question is, what would be the proposed height? We understand that the massing can be whatever you want as of right, and that if you choose a very narrow floor plate, then your building could be very tall. We do understand that, but for the sake of doing a comparison analysis, what would you predict would be a realistic building height for a fully commercial building and for a mixed-use building, just so that we can compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges?
Yes, thank you.
Well, I think for the commercial building that we've looked at as of right, Wesley said it's in the 400 plus feet tall. Of course, that could, if you had a boutique office building, you might have that even taller with smaller floor plates. But for the residential side, I'm not sure we've done that analysis as to how tall we could go or would reasonably go. Tiago, you may speak to that. But the fact of the matter is that our preferred way here is office. We love this as an office location. We think it's that's just the right use for it. And so that's what we've focused our energies on. The hotel residential is really a backup just in case, because you can't build an office building without a tenant. And while we're talking to some tenants, we haven't yet signed a lead tenant, so we have to have a backup.
Got it. Okay. Dave, if I can provide another way to look at those numbers, roughly, if you look at the density, the base density, meaning the as of right density, the amount of square feet as of right for this particular project is 616,000. Okay. And the bonus is 560,000. So roughly it is double. It's a little less than double. But, if we want to do a back of the envelope calculation, let's say it's double. So you can basically, and you see that in the comparison between the commercial as of right and commercial with bonus, you go from 400 feet to 858 feet. Once again, you're doubling. So I think it's fair to say that if you apply the same math, the as of right residential would be 1,060 feet divided by 2.
No, that's not accurate. That's not entirely accurate because of the nature.
Of course, it's not entirely accurate. We understand. It's sort of like rough back of the envelope.
Right, because you the more you have, the more you're going to widen. Right, so we would widen the floor plates towards the top because we don't want to build 1,500 feet tall. Right, so it might be 700 to 1,000. It might be 1,000 to 1,000. Right, we haven't looked at it. So you're right on the. I think on the office side because there's certain office size floors that you want. But on the residential, you can have a small tower, or if you have the extra envelope and the extra footprint, and you could still go tall with a wider floor plate. But anyhow, we don't have to go into the minutia of
I think that roughly
it's fine. Whatever you say.
The density bonus is pretty much a doubling factor. Go ahead, David.
One more
follow up.
One more little follow up, if I may. The actual construction of the subway itself, having used the Fifth Avenue subway a lot, for most of the last year, one of the subways was down. And for some reason, the MTA did not bother to change the broken subway, the subway that was working, to the up subway. So you either had to walk the 8 stories or else take the subway to a working and into another subway station. Any thought about putting in 3 escalators, because one escalator was not working most of last year at the 53rd Street station. And I would hate to see that happen again.
All the more reason to get something brand new, state of the art. But I think we could talk to that, Stantec or MTA.
Yeah, Daniel, if you could take that, if you could speak to that.
I think that's something we'd have to discuss with the MTA. There may be some code implications in terms of having escalators without a stair, because I believe you could only fit in this footprint here 3 escalators or 2 escalators and a stair. And as you know, the 53rd Street is too narrow to go much wider than that. So that's something we'll have to circle back with the MTA.
Will there still be other escalators on either side on where they're currently located, or this is going to be it for the station?
We'll still have the 2 existing cores, so you'll still have the 4 existing escalators, and all of this would be in addition to that and not necessarily interrupt any current operations during construction. So that's also a nice feature about this.
So there will be some backup, David.
This will create additional redundancy, David.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on, the next question goes to Mike.
Okay, thank you. Could you explain to me about this expansion of hotel use on lot 9 for 2,000 square feet? I don't understand how this relates to the project.
Sure. So lot 9, as you rightly point out, is not part of this proposed project. It's not part of the development site, but it is on the zoning lot. And so at the time that Extel purchased the unused development rights and bonus development rights from lot 9, they retained 2,500 square feet of zoning floor area on that site. So it allows them to build a small expansion on the rooftop of that building.
So is that going to also be analyzed for that rooftop?
Yes,
shadows and...
Yes, so we have included it in the draft scope of work, or I should say city planning is including in the draft scope of work, and it will be studied in the EIS as part of the development.
But that doesn't require any special permit or ULURP action?
The rights, technically the rights that they are retaining are bonus rights. So it is part of the bonus that is being achieved by this.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
The transaction was that we purchased the whatever air rights there were, and also any potential bonus rights. So we have the use of the bonus rights that we would be getting based on that footprint. It is quite a large zoning lot. It's a combination of what we've done before and done now.
So that means that's a transaction that happened prior to the enactment of the zoning for accessibility.
I think
you purchased the air rights.
Tiago, do you know if that's true? Tiago? You're on mute.
Yes, I believe that is true. But to any effect, as Wesley said, this is a very discrete project, a very small amount of area that is left behind. They explained at the time that they wanted to do an expansion and create an access to their roof. And so, as Wesley mentioned, it will be analyzed in detail as part of the EIS in the context of the overall project. Even the zoning lot is indeed very large.
So you bought the air rights, but basically you're giving them a little bit of the bonus so that they can build. No,
I don't think so. Is that right? I don't think so. I think they retained a little bit of their air rights to begin with. Isn't that right, Tiago? Or what's the story? You know?
I think they retained the air rights. They retained the use of 2,500 of bonus rights that would be achieved through the ULURP in case we achieve it.
Oh, Layla's right that they're getting part of the bonus air rights, or they already had those air rights. Does anyone know?
No, I believe so. They're getting a portion of the bonus rights, Gary.
Okay. So you're right, Layla.
Okay. So you basically, how much air rights have you acquired from adjacent properties? Or the other way to say it is, what is the size of the receiving site?
The receiving site is the development site, and that's the 43,000 square foot site.
Okay, and what is the base FAR for commercial? 10?
It's a split lot.
And 12 off. So it's really the base is about between 500,000 and 600,000 square feet.
But what is the base FAR blended?
It's about a 14 or so, right, Tiago? I think it's about a 14.
14. So like one portion is 10.
One portion is
12, and the other one is 15.
Correct.
Okay, like the sliver on Fifth is 15, and then the rest is 12. Okay, so it's blended 14. Okay, okay, all right. Thank you, Mike. I'm sure you have more questions.
Yes, I do. The zoning text amendment is only for section 81066. Is it only for the street wall and retail continuity on Fifth Avenue, or is there something else with the text amendment?
Yes, we anticipate that the entire text amendment will be in that section. However, that section is used to modify special permits, so it's not limited just to the waiver that you noted. It will do a few things. It's going to modify the zoning for accessibility provisions to allow this site to receive more than 20% cap under zoning for accessibility, which facilitates, of course, the construction of this massive set of subway improvements. Secondly, it's going to allow for certain modifications to the use and bulk regulations that apply at this site, so that the site can receive the bonus floor area.
You said it was more than 20%?
Yes.
Can you give us the percentage?
Yes, the total bonus would be just under 30%.
29%?
Yes.
And so the special permit for transit improvement is, I thought this zoning for accessibility had to do with the 1,500-foot radius from the development site, and 53rd and 5th Avenue is outside of that radius.
No, it's within the radius.
It meets the criteria. It's from the outer portion of the zoning lot that it's measured, so it is within 1,500 feet.
Okay, and because on the map that to show the draft scope, it shows it outside the radius, but also on the draft scoping document, it didn't include analyzing the number 7 train, 5th Avenue station. And I wanted to know why.
So it's just on your first point, the 1,500-foot radius, that was from the center of the site, and that was more to illustrate walking times. Okay. So that's not based on the zoning distances. As far as the number 7 train, Amy, do you want to respond on that point? You're on mute, Amy.
There we go. The 7 train, we've done some preliminary studies, and at this point, we don't anticipate additional detailed analyses for the 7 train, but that may change as we continue working with Transit and DOT on developing the analysis framework.
Because I just want to note that that 5th Avenue, Bryant Park, 42nd Street subway station already has 3 elevators that go to mezzanines, but there's no access to any of the platforms. So there's 3 buildings that's got a subway bonus, but it's still a non-ADA access subway station. And the 7 train station is within that 1,500-foot radius. So I just wanted to know if it could be included in this scoping.
Well, it would be considered as we move the process along, yes. But I know that we looked at the Greater East Midtown rezoning for some background information and used that for some of the baseline conditions that we're looking at. But as we move the analyses forward, this may become something that we'll need to analyze further.
But why is it maybe? Why isn't it yes, we will analyze?
I think, if you don't mind, I can jump in. Specifically at Bryant Park under 6th Avenue, I don't know if the Helene Cinque is still on, but I believe that station's ADA accessibility is being covered under another project. And specifically for 5th Avenue on the 7 line, ZFA opens up a number of lots that are exploring that station as well. So as far as the MTA was concerned, for a bonus project, they wanted us to tackle the much needed 53rd and 5th station.
And I think that's one of the key items for MTA and city planning, is that this would be kind of getting everything done in the station in one go and not have a constant interruption and construction for who knows how many years, 10, 20, 30 years, or maybe never. Some of the stuff might never get done.
That's exactly it. This Helene Singer MTA. Having one developer sort of do this entire complex is a major coup for us. Otherwise, as I said before, it probably never would have happened, or would have happened in stages and would have been torture, like either under construction forever, or just a couple pieces built and the whole thing never really come together. So to have the ability to get this done in one fell swoop is just an amazing thing for the MTA.
I understand. And we are, and as part of the analyses that we'll be doing for Seeker, for the transportation analysis, we will be looking at the different subway stations and capacity issues, and if the project would result in any impacts at those stations. And that is separate from the transit improvements that would be happening at the 53rd Street station. So if impacts are identified, then we would develop mitigation measures appropriate to those stations.
Okay, but I just want to note that the 7th Fifth Avenue, Bryant Park is the 15th busiest station in the subway system, and you identified 53rd Street and Fifth Avenue as the 37th busiest. So it would be more public use if that station became fully ADA accessible. Moving on to another thing is you also asked for a special permit to modify the pedestrian circulation for 8145. Is that to not widen the sidewalks on 46th and 47th Street?
Yeah, so that's among the regulations that we anticipate modifying. There's possible that under the scenarios, we may need to modify the pedestrian circulation space requirements. We think likely in terms of some of the dimension requirements. They said they have certain minimum lengths and depths. To the extent that it is the amount of space that's required, square footage, we think that would probably be something nominal. But we are quantifying that as part of the land use application, and we'll be back before this board to speak to that in more detail.
Okay. And for the 53rd Street, Fifth Avenue subway elevator, it showed on your drawings that the elevator shaft will be on the property of 665 Fifth Avenue. Who is the owner of that property, and how will they be compensated for taking away their property?
That is correct. It's part of the new Rolex development. And we have coordinated an easement acquisition from them free of charge, instead of them taking the existing sidewalk stair and moving it into their building, which didn't work for a variety of reasons. They have given us the opportunity, which, as you said, sort of Bryant Park doesn't have, with a one-stop elevator to take you down from the street down to the two track levels. So it's a one-stop elevator for ADA accessibility, which is unique to our system. And we feel that, it's a real asset. And we are in the midst of negotiating an easement agreement with Rolex, right now. We're almost done with it. So they will build the shaft, and then Xtel will come in and fit it out. And that's being coordinated.
Helen, can you actually speak to the free of charge component of this transaction? It's very unheard of.
It is part of sort of zoning, as opposed to a requirement for them to do A, they're doing B as a replacement. So that's really all it is. It's just, was just swapping out two different things. Instead of them doing something that would be required under zoning, they're doing something else.
And what are they doing? What is the swap? I'm not sure I understand.
They're giving us an easement, and they're actually will be building the shaft as part of their construction. So the elevator shaft would be constructed just sort of as a vertical element.
Layla, normally they would have to move the stairs into their building, which would impinge more greatly on their footprints. So they're not having to do that, and instead they're doing this.
Yes.
Layla, if I could explain that also, that the easement is being provided pursuant to zoning for accessibility under the new requirements that allow the MTA to require an easement in connection with developments and enlargements. And so that's the basis for what Helene described as no cost.
Okay.
Thank you.
But is it correct that under the new zoning, any such easement in a typical configuration would have to be compensated by the MTA?
I can speak to that generally, that the zoning resolution does not provide that. Instead, it says that in connection with developments and enlargements of certain sites in close proximity to subway stations, the MTA can, if it determines it's necessary, require an easement, and it must be provided by the owner. And that's set forth in zoning for accessibility, and we can share those provisions.
Just making our job even harder.
All right. Mike, any more questions? I can always circle back and come back to you.
But just to follow up on that one point, and I'll let other people talk. The Rolex building will pay for the building of the elevator shaft, and then Xtel will pay for the maintenance, or what will Xtel be responsible for?
Xtel will be installing the actual elevator. They'll be fitting out the shaft with the elevator.
Okay, and it's like the 57th Street project, they paid for the elevator and then one replacement elevator. Is that going to be a similar thing, or is it going to be perpetual maintenance?
We actually haven't gotten there in terms of the negotiation, but we will. We will sort of negotiate with Xtel with the whole package of what they're doing and what the requirements are.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for great questions always. Moving on to EJ. EJ, go ahead.
Thanks, Layla. Mike asked a lot of my questions already. I do have a couple of follow-up questions about the kind of in two parts. First, the improvements on 53rd Street. Can you talk a little bit about how the bonus for this set of improvements was determined? Were these particular improvements on the menu defined by East Midtown rezoning with the associated values?
Yeah, so it includes all of the improvements that were identified under the Greater East Midtown text for the station, plus additional significant additional improvements. So that's beyond what was identified under Greater East Midtown.
Is there any way to get more granular?
Yes, as part of the future application, we are going to be providing quite a bit of detail and comparison on what the Greater East Midtown program required versus this, but just at a high level, the Greater East Midtown zoning provided for up to 440,000 square feet of bonus for a slate of improvements at the station. And then this project is proposing additional improvements for a total of 560,000.
Okay, so the sheer number of improvements that you're executing on and the square footage that they add up to is why the bonus ends up exceeding 20% of the lot, and why you're going to be applying for that particular text amendment?
Yes,
that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just some specifics on the proposed improvements. The one number I saw was that there's currently 58,000 daily entrances and exits. Do you have a number on what the capacity increase will be based on these improvements, based on current pre-COVID totals? What is the expected mitigation factor for those 50,000 daily entrances and exits based on the new entrances, the new improvements. Do you know what that's anticipated to do to either spread out those 58,000 or to lead to increased usage of the station?
Daniel or Helene, do you have any data on that?
I can speak to that briefly. There's been some high-level analysis of that's been done to first generate what the needs were, and so just some rough numbers. Again, that is pre-pandemic, obviously, but in terms of percentages, you have about, I believe, and I can get back to you if these are incorrect, but I think it's a 55-45% split in terms of who's using the East Core versus who's using the West Core. And the estimate goes up to around 28% would divert to the Center Core. So not only would we would be providing additional entry points as part of this improvement, but we would also be reducing the issues at each existing core. So that's the whole concept behind this. The location of it is beneficial for both access to Fifth and to Madison because of the short block. Okay,
thanks, that's helpful. Are there any major changes to the East and West cores being proposed, or are those pretty much being left alone? And it seemed like everything was focused on the new Center Core.
The focus is on the Center Core. We're leaving the other areas alone.
Okay, thanks. So my final question gets back to the scope of the actual EIS, which is obviously as you said, the EIS will assess, traffic effects on the area, transit, commuter effects on the area, pedestrian effects on the area. I think, Amy, you spoke to this already, but I basically just wanted to check and make sure, so if for example, the new, commuter estimates and pedestrian estimates for the area increase to such a degree as a result of the EIS that they exceed kind of any of the new capacity being added by the 53rd Street improvements, then the EIS could end up proposing further transit improvements to, I guess, 53rd or other surrounding stations to mitigate those effects. Is that correct?
Right. We'll be analyzing the stations that would be most affected by the project. So if there is mitigation needed, if there are impacts, we would identify the mitigation for those stations as appropriate. And that is very separate from the 53rd Street improvements.
Okay. Yep. Great. Thanks. Layla, that was it for the questions I had that Mike hadn't already asked. I guess I just have a process question for you, Layla, or the applicant, I guess, if you want to ask them. Will the final EIS and zoning text amendments come back before us in Community Board 5? Will they be separate, and will they be in that order, or will they be in a different order? Do you know what to expect?
The draft EIS will come to us. So we will have an opportunity to review the draft environmental impact statement. What we have here today is the scope of work, which is basically
I guess what I'm asking
out what the environmental impacts are going to be assessed.
I guess what I'm asking is whether the final EIS will come to us before the zoning text amendments get considered or approved. No. Okay.
Or I wanted, I'm speaking under David's cautious eye. I think the answer is no. David, confirm or
that. I mean, the way the process works is that when city planning certifies the ULURP applications and the text amendments will be referred to you for your customary, 60-day review. And at that time, you also have access to the DEIS, and I assume we'll make comments in your proceedings and at the City Planning Commission, which has the official hearing on the DEIS. Taking those into account and making whatever modifications it wants to make to the project and to the applications, City Planning will then issue the FEIS. So your role has always been to comment on the draft to allow input into the final. That's the way it would work here.
Okay, and so we would have access to the draft around the same time that we're also considering the text amendments.
Absolutely. The text amendments can't go out to you until there's a DEIS that city planning says is complete and ready for review. So they will come.
Thank you. Thank you for refreshing my memory on that process. Appreciate it.
All right. Next to get some questions out is Nancy. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. The first question I have is it possible to put an elevator from the mezzanine to the lower platform? An escalator, rather.
Yeah,
You're just showing a stair.
That would also be something we could explore with the MTA. There are obviously major structural complexities in digging diagonal shafts like this next to this 100-year-old tunnel. So these are things we're exploring, but as it currently stands, the request and the preference has been escalators to the upper platform and then a shorter stair. I believe there are maintenance concerns of having escalators go that short of a run. I mean, that's more of a typical one-story flight rather than the 7 or 8 story flight from upper platform to mezzanine warranting the escalator.
Okay, my second question is it possible to have 2 elevators for redundancy, since oftentimes one elevator is out? The MTA has issues with maintaining their elevators on a regular basis. And so an ADA station can quickly become non-ADA because the elevator is not in operation.
I
think possible?
I think we understand that. I think right now our policy is not for redundant elevators, although we are looking at it very carefully, because our goal right now is to make every station ADA accessible with one elevator. And then, I'm not sure when, but I said they are looking at the possibility of redundancy, because we do understand that elevators, that are especially exposed to the elements have issues and are out of service often. And we're working hard to get better at it.
Thank you. My third question is, if you're going to look at residential as a use in this building, are you going to be doing anything with looking at schools, available schools in this neighborhood? One of the things we have found in our community board is that we've had residential buildings and not enough schools. And there certainly aren't enough schools or preschool in this area. So I'm wondering if that could be looked at in the EIS.
Sure. Well, at this point, the number of dwelling units that would be
Eric, you can't talk now. Eric, you can't talk now.
Who's that?
Okay, I think Nancy was addressing someone in her surroundings.
Sorry, I have an issue here. So, 2 people having meetings in the same room. Sorry. Forgive me. So I was wondering if you're going to be...
Yeah.
Okay. So, and my fourth question is, will we be able to know the value of the transit improvements against the value of the additional bulk that you're getting on this deal?
I think.
Do you want me to answer the question about the dwelling units first in schools?
Let's start. Go ahead on the dwelling units.
Sure. At this point, the number of dwelling units that is proposed under the residential development is below thresholds requiring analysis for schools and other community facilities. If that number changes, if the breakdown of hotel and residential switches or changes substantially and there are more dwelling units anticipated, then we would do a community facilities analysis. But at this point, it screens out because it's below the seeker threshold.
How many dwelling units do you anticipate?
It is 468, and that's using the seeker 850 square feet per dwelling unit number.
And that does not trigger school capacity analysis?
It does not. It's below threshold.
Oh my God, the seeker manual really needs to be revamped. It's crazy.
Leila, I don't think we would actually do that many units. I don't think we would actually do that many units anyhow, because that's based on
right.
850 square feet.
Mm-hmm. And the 850 square feet is a very conservative dwelling unit number too.
And what is the yield of student per dwelling unit? Is it 1.2? I think it's 1.2 for elementary.
Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head.
We don't have to redo the math, but it's just, you know, crazy. And I understand your point, Gary. And, you know, we've heard many times that people who buy into those buildings don't go to public schools and all of that. But those are not valid arguments, or, you know, it's just not the proper way to, you know, plan for the future. Okay, moving on, Nancy, your the last bit of your question was on the cost of these improvements,
right,
and the valuation.
I think that the city planning, you know, especially on the east side, Midtown bonus, and going forward in terms of the MTA improvements, it used to be a negotiation, deal by deal, and it'd be a trade-off depending on what the market was. The developer would want to get it, you know, for nothing, and the MTA would want you to give them a gold-plated station. And now it seems pretty standardized. You do this particular work, you get so and so much bonus. You do this work, you get so and so much bonus, whether it's an elevator or whatever. So it seems like it's pretty standardized now. So I don't think we have a direct and specific number because we haven't negotiated in that way, and we don't even know what it is. This is based on the work and based on the city planning's assessment of, you know, what kind of bonus should be compensation for what kind of transit work.
Okay, I'm going to drill a little bit deeper. I'm sorry. There is a cost. Okay, so you're going to have to help us figure out how we can assess this cost. We understand that this is not the way you negotiated with the Department of City Planning, but the question that Nancy has is, what is the estimated cost for this improvement? With the understanding, we got it that, you know, Rolex is picking up the tab to actually build the shaft. But Nancy's question is, what is the estimated cost for the other improvements that are part of this this project?
Yeah, at this point, we don't know. We haven't, you know, we're not that far down the road with, you know, very detailed or have bid the job. I mean, we don't know the answer to that right now.
Okay. Just to follow up on that, who is responsible for the overcost? Is it a negotiated flat fee with MTA, and then if there's any overcost, it's MTA that is responsible, or is it the developer?
Well, that's the same thing. So they put the burden on us. We have to deliver them the product. If we save money and the market's soft and we can buy it better, that's our benefit. The market goes crazy like it is now, that's our cost. So basically the burden is on us. You deliver the improvements and the product, and we'll give you the FAR, and that's the deal.
Okay. All right. And then the construction of the shaft by Rolex is part of a separate transaction. Does anybody know what is the cost to Rolex for the shaft?
I do not. Once again, we stopped talking in terms of dollars and of transit improvements.
Okay, that's remarkable. Okay, Nancy, do you have any follow-ups? Okay.
I think just one further thing, Alita. I think there is a basis to it. I mean, city planning has I'm sure it did work on it and got general values and estimates for what stuff cost. So I think there is some logical basis to it. I can't say that it's perfect. It depends on the time, depends on the market. But I do think that there was some logic to the way they did it. And it has the big benefit of not turning everything into an adversarial negotiation.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is when we did One Vanderbilt, we got a cost number, and it was a great cost number, and it really made the development look very good in the eyes of the community board. So I think we'd like to see the value, and you may be surprised at the value you're providing, and maybe you should know that, because I think that's a good thing. Okay.
I mean, we think this is a great project, a great improvement for the city of New York. It's not MTA, it's the city of New York and the people that use the subway. We think it's a great trade-off. But the truth is, it doesn't make a difference to us. What we're providing, that doesn't mean MTA is going to give us one more benefit or one more bonus or anything. I mean, they're making us do an awful lot of work there, and we got to do it. And so, like I said, it's on us. We don't know the exact cost at this point, but we think this is a very meritorious project and trade-off.
Okay, moving on. Mike, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have 3 questions. The 20,000 square foot event space, is that, how would that be used? For public events, private events, catering, dance, music, what?
You want to talk briefly, Tiago?
Sure. So from our perspective, in the context of the office building, it's really an amenity for tenants. So it kind of provides a large space that can complement their offices, where they can host large meetings, shareholder meetings, or sales events, or training and education for their staff. But it's designed in a way that it could accommodate outside events. It could function independently as well. Hence, we have a separate entrance for it, so that the use can be, the traffic can be. You don't have people running through the office lobby. You can have an alternative point so that the building is never congested.
And will there be an internal entrance to the space also, so not everybody is out on the sidewalks? They're going to have. Okay.
That's correct. That's correct.
And then my second question is, you asked for a special permit to modify the Fifth Avenue sign regulation with the height, illumination, and area of the sign. Why do you need that?
So for a building of this type, the Fifth Avenue regulations are really designed around small retail frontages at the lower level. And so for something located more in the center of this building, we think that there was a need for modifications to those regulations. This, however, is another thing that we are drawing into the land use application, putting into the land use application drawings. It will be dimensioned and detailed there. And so we'll be back before this board with those details.
Okay. And last thing is for the shadow study for the scope of work, are the Channel Gardens and the Rockefeller Ice Rink considered public plazas? And the raised garden beds around St. Patrick's, is that also considered public plazas?
It's open spaces that are publicly accessible is what we'll be analyzing. I don't know if all of those rooftop gardens are publicly accessible or not, but that is something that we'll look at, and the ones that are publicly accessible will be analyzed.
Okay. All right. One last question. These external rooms, terraces on the upper levels, will they be publicly accessible or for paying patrons, or is it just for the
those are associated with the uses in the building, so they would be the office users' amenity.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Okay. I have a few questions of my own. Currently, the subway station, does it meet the standard for evacuation? according to the NFPA, and correct me if you believe that the NFPA is not the regulatory agency or entity to provide that kind of rating, but can you give us a sense of the ability to evacuate the subway station currently?
Daniel, do you have a sense for that?
I do not know offhand, Layla.
And I do not know. Sorry.
Okay. Is it correct that NFPA is the rating agency, National Fire Protection Association?
Yes, for new construction, Layla. So, for example, the Second Avenue subway was governed by NFPA 130 for fixed passenger rail. I don't know how many stations in the system meet NFPA 130 building code. New York State building code typically governs these stations for existing modifications.
So we don't have a way to compare the current rating and rate and speed of evacuation with the new speed of evacuation after the construction of these transit improvements. Is that correct?
I think we would. I mean, in terms of the travel distance to exit the station, obviously, intuitively, we know we're improving on that. If you're at the center of the platform, you would have a closer exit point. I think it's also total time to clear the platform is a measure.
Yeah.
That would also improve. I don't have those numbers.
Is there a way to have more numbers overall for this application? You know, we really work very hard to base our determination on data. And if we don't have the data, it makes it really hard for us to make the correct evaluation. And short of having the correct evaluation, we may default to a decision that you don't like. So we really need this data. It is important. You know, safety is paramount. You know, it kind of trumps everything. We need to know, you know, what would be the improved rate of evacuation for the subway. So we need to know the baseline, and we need to know the improved rate of evacuation. My next question along the same line is on throughput. Do you anticipate that this particular set of improvements would actually increase throughput, meaning that you would be able to increase the capacity of the trains coming in and out of the station because of this improvement?
Unfortunately, we don't have anyone from ops planning here. We could get you that information, but I don't think we can provide that tonight.
Okay. Why don't we do that? Let's agree that we're going to do, you know, a list of data points that we would like to receive, and then we can, you know, exchange offline and find a way to provide this data to the greater public, so that, you know, we have a full understanding of the proposal. My next question, I'm not sure I totally understand the math for the receiving side. So you told us that the receiving side or the development side is 43,000 square feet. And the FAR, the base FAR is blended is 14. So that brings the as of right density to 602,000 square feet. And you're telling us that the base development right is 116,000. So that would suggest that you acquired 14,000 square feet of development rights elsewhere. Am I misunderstanding the definition of the receiving site?
I'm not sure that I follow your.
No, I think I understood it. I think the receiving site is just the footprint, and yes, we did have probably some air rights from something that's in the zoning lot besides the bonus that we're looking for.
And can you actually provide this number? How many square feet of air rights did you acquire on
we
the?
We can show you the as of right breakdown. We'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes very quickly. Yeah, can you actually speak to the reason why you're not evaluating energy in the EIS?
Amy, can you speak to that?
Yes, we did the preliminary studies that look at the population increase. We looked at the incremental difference between the proposed development and the no action development, and looked at what energy would be generated with the project, and we were below the thresholds requiring further analysis for energy. Were those tables included in the draft scope? I don't recall. No, they were not. Okay. But we did provide those to city planning as part of the EAS that supports the draft scope.
Okay. And natural resources, I think it's self-explanatory. Oh yeah, and my last question is, do you have to comply with daylight evaluation?
Yes.
And will the building comply?
No, those are among the waivers we're seeking are heightened setback waivers. So there will be modifications to the daylight compensation.
Okay.
Daylight compensation or daylight evaluation, depending on which route we choose. But
so the building as the massing that you showed us, which is for the commercial building, which is only 858 feet tall, does not have a passing score on the Wolfram analysis.
That's correct. The 417-foot building would have a passing score. So as part of the land use application, we will be quantifying that daylight evaluation score, and so that will be included in the land use application.
Okay, and do you currently know what is the score of the building for which you showed us the design?
No. Okay,
but this will be included in the DEIS, right?
In the land use application that's published and referred to you at the time of the DEIS, yes.
Okay, and you will do this analysis for both scenarios, right? The commercial and the mixed use.
It's anticipated to be a single envelope that fits either program, so the evaluation will be one score for both.
Got it. Okay, no more questions on my end. Members of the committee, any last second questions before I open up to members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I will now open up the floor to members of the public. If you have comments or questions, you can use the raise hand function. Please make sure to state your name and any affiliation before you speak. And the first speaker is Jim Wright. You are permitted to speak. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Jim Wright, Community Board 5 resident in that district. I just wanted to follow up on Nancy's question about redundancy, and basically reinforce the point that unless those elevators are working, the station is not accessible. And given the repair history of the elevators, I would think it would be advisable to provide redundancy in the elevators. This is going to be a one-shot deal to get those elevators in. It's going into another building that's apparently under redevelopment. It would likely be impossible to do that again in the future. So I would really suggest providing that redundancy now. It's a relatively low cost. And also just note the configuration of the elevator is actually pretty clever, bringing the elevator from the street down to the platforms without going through the mezzanine. So by virtue of that, it already is saving the cost of one elevator. So you could apply that to the redundant elevator. And I just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. The next person to speak is Charles. Charles, you are going to be permitted to speak. You are permitted to speak.
Hi, can you hear me? Thank you very much. Yes, so I'd like to talk about the accessibility improvements. It's great that there's a elevator, ADA elevator, but that only addresses one population of the disabled community. It's fine for people with wheelchairs, but for people like me who are blind, we have no improvements. You know, at the moment, for me to get onto a subway train, I have to basically get my stick and tap it along the side of the train, and I hope to God that I'm not in between two cars, that I'm actually, you know, at the door of the train. But I know from the past that the MTA has discovered methods to help blind people to navigate stations and get onto trains, which is those tactile strips that were used at the accessibility lab at Metrotech. Why are these strips not being implemented in this station, especially a station that's having new improvements? And what about audible pedestrian signals to help people who are blind to navigate across, especially Fifth Avenue and those busy streets of that area, to even get to the subway station? That's my first question. My second question is about the mixed use, the alternative plan to do with residential. Is there going to be any affordable housing? As we know, there's a shortage of affordable housing in the city for low income people, and you know, especially people who are disabled, who are on SSI, things like that. It'd be great to know if there's going to be affordable housing. And my third question is just about safety. How close is this building to the nearest hospital or firehouse? If there was a fire, you know, is this building taller than the most tower ladders? How would emergency vehicles have access, especially with so much congestion in the city? How fast could they even get to this building, and how would they even pull up and see to any emergencies? Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I will, it looks like this is the last member of the public who wishes to speak. So we can turn back to the applicant and they can address those questions and comments. If other members of the public wish to speak, the public session is still open, so you can use the raise hand function if you wish to. So I don't know who wants to take the redundancy comment. Is it something that could be considered? Just for reference, when we reviewed the previous application under the same zoning text, we actually made the recommendation that there should be redundancy for this very reason, that MTA seems to be unable to timely repair elevators. So would it be something that you would consider?
You know, I have to say I'm the wrong person to really address this. I do know we don't have a policy yet. I do know that we're looking into it, but you know, more than that, I really can't speak to. But once again, we can have our ADA people come and address that for you.
I can speak to the technical aspect really briefly, where this project is obviously does not control that private property, and so that's a separate question about the size of the easement. But as far as what this scope is doing, it is building in or eliminating the potential for breakdowns by performing additional improvements to create a single elevator run. And so Greater East Midtown priority list actually did have 2 elevators, as was mentioned, would have taken you from sidewalk to mezzanine first, requiring a transfer, and then a mezzanine to platform elevator. So by doing it in a single shot, we're eliminating the increased chance for a breakdown and lack of accessibility.
Okay. Thank you. And the next question was on improvements for the visually impaired. Is it something that is going to be done? And have you consulted with ADA consultants, not only on mobility, but also on visual impairments?
I guess I can take this as well. So we'll defer to the MTA on the outcomes of that pilot program. I believe it was at J Street Metro Tech, and I think there was some successes here. So we will be following all of the latest and greatest design standards for all of these improvements. And obviously what we described is, very high level still, and we're talking about the basic geometry, but we will certainly have to fit out all of these improvements with the latest standards. And so we certainly have not precluded all of the things Charles mentioned about enhanced accessibility, I guess the universal accessibility that we would ideally look for at these stations.
Okay, I think you should go above and beyond the base code requirements. The next question was on affordable housing. Will there be any affordable housing in the mixed use scenario?
So we don't know that for sure. As they say, our first preference is the office scenario, but I think a lot depends also on what they do with the new rules, right? They're looking at the 421A Affordable New York program now. The governor just spoke about it a little bit today. So I think that would be very much dependent on what they do in terms of any new affordable programs, if we could even consider it. Obviously, it's a very expensive building. The land's very expensive. We would have to consider that if and when we go residential. But right now, we're focused on office.
Okay, thank you. And the final question is on safety. How, in case of a fire, how would the fire ladder and would reach the upper floors of the building, especially if it's a residential building, which would be a taller alternative?
Grant, are you able to speak to safety and design and how fire access works here?
There would be dedicated fire lifts that would allow people to egress the building, and stairs, obviously stairs.
So you would have to enter the building in order to address a fire. You wouldn't be able to do it from the street.
Building of this height, yes.
Okay. I actually have one last question. Can you actually speak to the height of the mechanical rooms for this building?
Is that something you have?
Yeah, that's, I mean, the mechanical volume is nothing more than what's absolutely required for the mechanical plants in the facility.
Once again, I'm sorry, give us numbers.
I want to know how tall they are. How tall are they?
How tall are they?
Mechanical floors, how tall are they?
Yeah, they're between 28 and 30 feet tall. So they're just double height.
Like a double height
floors with intermediate, some metal structures in between to access the equipment. So if your question is if there are any voids in this project, there are not. It's strictly what is required to locate the equipment that is needed for the building to function.
Okay, and how many repeats are you going to have, and are they going to be less than 75 feet apart?
Can you just ask that again?
She wants to know if we have two mechanical floors, one after the other, on top of each other, and there's less than 75 feet in between.
No, we do not.
So they're single mechanical floors, Leila. No doubling up.
Okay. All right. Last chance for questions from members of the committee. Seeing none, and members of the public. Okay, seeing none, we can move to business session. During business session, only of the committee are allowed to discuss the matter unless requested by the chair. So we need comments. Once again, we are looking at the scope of work. So I think it's reasonable and probably prudent not to spend too much time on the design that was presented to us. This is something that we will have a chance to review again. And maybe this design will have changed. Maybe there will be a residential alternative design that will be presented to us. So really what we're looking at today is, the scope of what is being proposed and the actions that are being proposed. So we understand that, there's a number of special permits and there is a zoning text amendment. So what is interesting to note is that, this text is literally brand new. It took a while for this text to be negotiated. And typically a brand new text metrics, maybe we can find some, areas that need to be debugged. But the metrics of the text are kind of like the core. And the core of the text is that, you do improvements and then you get up to 20% bonus. And the reason it is capped is that it gives a sense of predictability as to what is going to be constructed. The other thing I would mention to bring a little bit of context is that there is a set of improvements for this very station under the East Midtown Special District that was voted and approved in 2017. So we want to be mindful that this improvement and this density in exchange for the improvement is actually supposed to be in East Midtown, and East Midtown is a district that Community Board 5 wants to support. We want East Midtown to be successful. It is successful currently. We know that. We've reviewed a large number of new projects in East Midtown, so the text is working. Probably even faster than anyone anticipated. And from what we have seen, it is producing quality buildings in the sense that, they are doing what they intended to do. They are absorbing a little bit of landmarks, available air rights. They're providing transit upgrades. They're providing public realm improvements. So we just have to, keep all of these pieces in mind when we review this particular project. We can't really review it simply in a vacuum. We have to look at its merits, but we also have to look at it in the context of, the broader Midtown area. So that's for a little bit of framing. And now up to you guys for comments. You can use the raise hand function. We need comments. Mike, I'm looking at you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, because it's the scope of work portion, I just want to make sure that you talk about density, the density of the ADA accessibility at 53rd and 5th versus the density of ADA accessibility at 42nd and 5th, I think should have numbers to evaluate which station would be more valuable to more numbers of people. And then secondly, I just think that the Channel Gardens and the ice rinks, whether they're considered publicly accessible or public plazas or whatever, that we should call them out. And also the gardens around St. Patrick's Cathedral as places that should be evaluated, whether they meet the criteria or not.
Yeah, I agree. Very good points. Thank you, Mike. Other comments? EJ.
Layla, I don't know if you have a sense of exactly what artifact you'd like to come from the committee at this stage. Obviously, since we're just talking about the scope here, I mean, you know, I heard a number of good things about what's going to be measured or assessed as part of the scope, and then I'm sure we'll have opinions on whether it's commensurate with the bonus and some of the text amendments and things like that after it's measured and evaluated in terms of shadows, in terms of, you know, pedestrian counts, in terms of capacity, et cetera. You know, whether we produce, you know, an artifact tonight, a document or not, you know, I think we would probably just want to reiterate that we listed a bunch of things tonight that we don't have numbers for yet that we'd like to see, you know, when that draft EIS is produced, capacity numbers for the improvements at 53rd Street, bonus values for each improvement on 53rd Street from my, you know, particular transit perspective, I think would be at the top of that list.
Yeah, I actually, you know, to go further on that, I think that the lack of data for this project makes it really difficult for us to do our job. And, you know, I find it really terribly frustrating to be told that, you know, this is not how we look at it, or, you know, we don't really have this information. We can't plan the city, you know, we can't plan Midtown without the data. So I would really urge the team of applicants to continue to engage with us. We need to have this information. We need to have, you know, a sense of the cost. And, you know, the reason for that is that when we look at these improvements, we look at them in comparison with the MTA budget. We need to know what would have been carried on the MTA budget if it were up to the MTA to carry these improvements. That's what we're looking at. You know, we're not just here to, you know, assess vaguely a look and feel. So I have to admit, you know, being really terribly frustrated, and you know, it's good in a way that, you know, it is only the scoping, so we can communicate and share this frustration, which hopefully will result with you know, the applicant providing this information to us, so that, you know, we can do a better job. So, you know, maybe what we need to do is you know, share that in the form of a resolution, share the areas where we want, you know, the scope to be broadened, to make sure that the DEIS is reflective of all the impacts that this building would have. And we can, you know, keep our more granular comments for the upcoming session, when we will have an application and a draft ready for us to review. So I don't know if it's something that the rest of the committee would be agreeable to. Nancy, you had some very pointed questions, so I want to make sure that we address the concerns that are linked to your questions in any resolution. I think that, you know, redundancy is something that, you know, maybe we want to add language to a policy, you know, requesting a policy change on the MTA's end, that, you know, maybe it should be their policy that, you know, there should be redundancy, because the maintenance is just so critical. And, you know, if the elevator is out of order, then we lose everything. You know, it's like this bonus becomes meaningless. The station is no longer accessible. So, you know, maybe this is something that we should include. Aaron, you have your hand up, and then I'll get to you, Nancy. Aaron, go ahead.
So, Layla, I agree with what you were sort of just saying. Just a couple clarification questions. Are you saying that the location of the subway station at 53rd and 5th, are we saying that the improvements for this station, if they're used for this project, they're basically not going to be used for an official East Midtown project. That's what we're saying.
Correct. Well, that's the fact.
That's the fact, right?
That's not an assertion on our end. This is the fact. If improvements are done under this particular action, then they would not be undertaken and they would not generate an FAR bonus under the East Midtown special district. Right, and there's only a finite of transit stations in the vicinity that this could apply to. So we're going to run out of stations to upgrade essentially at some point. The official EAS, or what we're saying was when that's officially done. So will the questions about fire safety that were brought up by the public, is that going to be addressed? Like what is the FDNY plan? If we double the size of every Midtown office building, is the FDNY hiring more people? How is that addressed in the EAS? Because I would imagine, I understand it's state of the art. They're saying the building itself will have fire precautions, but physically, how is the city addressing the needs? Like we're saying, it doesn't trigger the school evaluation because there's not enough units. So it doesn't matter, even though, right, you could argue that. But how do we deal with that density just for emergency response or fire, or just, I'm just curious, will that be addressed in the EAS? And then just the irony about the transit improvements, but hopefully people who work in this building will use the subway, but will the EAS deal with the fact, again, you're doubling the size of the building, you're going to have rideshare cars in front, you're going to have traffic implications. I don't see that noted in the documents, but will that be handled in the EAS, or is that sort of ignored that, we're not we don't care about that? Is there a process, or again, is that something that's missing from the mechanism about evaluating that? So definitely transportation will be evaluated, and that includes subway, ridership increase, pedestrian congestion, and bike share, traffic, vehicular traffic. So all of that will be evaluated. Now, maybe we may want to say from the get-go that we want all of these to be, that it is our expectation that they would be fully mitigated. Because as you know, evaluating doesn't necessarily mean that if a finding of negative impact is determined, that it would be mitigated. There are many projects that, we see that it's going to have a negative impact, but the conclusion is it cannot be mitigated. So we will leave it as is, and the project will still move ahead. So maybe we want to say, from the get-go, our expectation is that all the transit impacts should be fully mitigated. On the fire and an emergency response impact, I do not believe that those are evaluated in the EIS. If anything, I think it would be under the community facilities, but those are not being assessed for this particular project. And this is something, if there is anything that is really germane to the exercise tonight, is actually to determine whether we agree with the applicant's assessment that community facilities don't trigger the threshold. And maybe we want to say, well, maybe it doesn't trigger the threshold, but it should still be evaluated because the threshold is too low or too high, or we believe that there would be more school kids, or that even if it only X number, we need to take it in the consideration of cumulative impact and other possible developments. So this is something that it's totally relevant to say, well, it should be evaluated. And then I can't remember what was your first point. Your first point was?
Well, I wanted to, I agree with the ADA questions that were raised by the public. And I think, look, if we're, and again, it's about the value of the commensurate value of the improvements. I feel like if all of that stuff needs to be considered, we should be, with what with what's happening in the building density, I feel like we should be getting the state of the art, and I guess the MTA is evaluating their needs, and I realize that they've sort of documented what they would like to happen, but I feel like we shouldn't be debating, whether or not it can be, redundancy in the elevators. I mean, we should be talking about a state of the art, like fully ADA. There should be no debate. And I feel like we're just not getting that level of improvements. I mean, we should be getting basically a brand new station for what we're giving up for that. And I think the fact that like the MTA only needs to do their bare minimum and that there's not, complete conversation about redundancies of elevators and et cetera. I feel like that needs to be addressed, like that needs to be part of the process, because I feel like we've been running into that multiple times. And I feel like we should address that in some way in the resolution for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you, Aaron. Nancy, go ahead.
Okay. So I think elevator redundancy is something we should push for. And I think we should mention, if we want to represent what has gone on at this meeting, that we're interested in seeing tactile platform surfaces for use by the visually impaired, so they know when they're entering a car as opposed to when they're in between cars. I was shocked that one of the attendees mentioned that is not available to him in subway stations, and that is atrocious. That's really, really, we should be embarrassed by that. The next thing is I think that we need to have some method, and I don't know what it is, to evaluate the value of what this community is giving up for the developer to get the additional bulk to their building. And I don't know what that method is, but we should ask for something that allows us to better evaluate what the trade-off is. Those are my comments.
Yeah, well, I think it's not terribly, it shouldn't be terribly complicated, right? I mean, these improvements are going to be put to bid. So there's going to be a cost to these improvements. And keep in mind that the improvements we're talking about here are not the excavation for the shaft, which, that is going to be a costly endeavor, but this tab is being paid by Rolex. All right, so the improvements for which the density bonus is being granted is for the retrofitting of the shaft with an elevator and those escalators. This has a cost. It's not terribly complicated to determine what that cost is. It's unfortunate that the applicant doesn't have this information, but it's not terribly complicated. I mean, MTA does that, at every monthly meeting, they talk about, cost of improvements. So it's not rocket science. Then the value of the bonus is also not terribly complicated. We know roughly how much, commercial space is sold and transacted on today's market. And we also know the value for residential, and we know the value for hotels. So all of that is not terribly complicated. When we hold these public hearings, we have this expectation that the applicant is going to be able to provide this information for our own edification so that we can make informed recommendations, and also for members of the public. Those are public hearings. They're for the public. They're not for anybody else's edification. So, I'm really hoping that, between now and the time the applicant comes back with the actual proposal, we will have this information and we'll be able to make this consideration, because in the end, it is kind of key, right? Are we getting our money's worth? And in exchange for what we're giving up, and we're giving up a lot. We're giving up the baseline of the cap for these transit improvements. Once again, let's keep in mind that once the text is changed, it applies to everybody. It is not specific to this project. So it means that, the zoning text amendment will be the new zoning text. And, therefore, anyone will be able to apply for 29% going forward. That will be the new cap, because it will be, the text will have been amended for this site and for all the sites in, here in Manhattan, elsewhere in the other boroughs. So it is something that we shouldn't take too lightly. So all of that is going to have to be taken into account. All of that, I think, should be noted in the resolution. My big pet peeve, is daylight evaluation. I think it's something that we don't want to create these canyons. We just don't. And as much as I think Fifth Avenue, is like having a Fifth Avenue frontage, has a little bit of a redeeming quality here. I think it's going to create very dark streets on 46 and 47, and I think this is something we should be concerned about. So I totally agree with your comment, Nancy. Mike, you have your hand up. Go ahead. And I don't know, Nancy, if you had any follow-ups, but I'll come back to you if you have any follow-ups. Mike, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate that we should be asking not only for the dollar cost and the dollar amount for maintenance, but also the actual estimate of number of people that will be serviced by these elevators. That's why I keep bringing up about the more busy elevators at Fifth Avenue and Sixth Avenue, because those improvements would help more people besides the 53rd Street being part of East Midtown and other properties being able to pay for those improvements. I just wanted to make sure the evaluation is not only about dollars, but also about number of people being helped.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. And I would love also to hear about throughput. Are we able to increase the number of people who can actually, go through this subway station because of these improvements? All right, Nancy, I don't know if you had any follow-up comments.
Well, we could ask for them to include community facilities anyway. Maybe they don't have to do it, but we could say that we're concerned about seeing what those community facilities are. It did come up from the public, and we do want to know about these community facilities if the building does go to residential. That's my comment.
We may also want to comment on the affordable housing component. I think that it would be. We should say something about any preference for an affordable housing component. I think that we so desperately lack affordable housing in CB5. I don't know how many units were, constructed in the past 10 years. I wouldn't be surprised if the answer is 0, which is really, it's a disgrace. So if the rest of the committee is on board, I think we should emphasize that there should be, if it is a mixed use development, there should be affordable housing. All right, any other comments from members of the committee? Yeah, Renee.
Leila, it seems this raises almost exactly the same issues that we heard the last time when we heard the first bonus under this legislation. And I'm wondering, is it worthwhile to think, the issues, the seeker not being effective, shadow study, redundancy, where the money goes in terms of keeping the escalator and elevator up to date, affordable housing. Is it possible that we should maybe do something like, I know that we use in parks, just a list of all these things that we're looking for?
I think so. I think it's a very good idea. You know, sort of like a matrix on how to evaluate these proposals. I would say the big difference with the proposal we reviewed 2 or 3 months ago is that there was no going above the threshold. You know, they capped it at, you know, the cap 20%.
Yeah.
They were not asking for more, and their side, you know, the receiving side, the development side was pretty small. So, you know, the multiplier was not as big as the one we're considering today. But otherwise, yeah, I think that, you know, it's you know, we're starting to develop the sort of you know, framework on how to look at those. So as a refresher, you probably remember that the committee passed a conditional approval, and that at a full board, it was turned into a deny unless. In order to avoid this sort of two-step process, I would think it would make sense to issue a deny unless and then listing all the conditions that we have been discussing. I think the point, once again, you know, it's the scoping session. The part that we really want to emphasize is that they should evaluate schools, they should evaluate all the light sensitive resources. They should do a thorough evaluation of transit and transportation. They should evaluate the impact to the fire stations. And we are strongly asking for all the data so that when the time comes to review the actual applications, we would make an informed recommendation. And then we would also ask that they consider improvements to accommodate visually impaired individuals, and emphasizing what we talked about, redundancy, the seeker formula not being adequate, and all of that was stated in our previous resolution. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, I second your motion. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, actually, I cannot make the motion. So, David, if you want that to be your motion, you can.
I would make the motion to deny unless, with all the addendums that we just discussed. Thank you.
Okay. And then now we need a second. Do we have a second? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So this is the vote of the evening. Bear with me. Dave.
Yes.
Nick.
Yes.
Andreas.
Yes.
Julie.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Tristan.
Yes.
CJ. I think he was with us. Maybe he left. Okay. EJ.
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Ryan.
No.
And Layla, I'm a yes. All right, the motion carries. Thank you to the applicants. Please, let's keep in touch. Let's continue to communicate. Help us better understand what the project entails so that we can make intelligent and informed recommendations. And we look forward to seeing you with the draft EIS as well as the applications. We thank you for your presence tonight. Once again, Happy New Year, everyone. And with all of that said, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.